Actually, when I was preparing for the comments today, before introducing Art, I came to realize why it is that the president's position at the Lake Forest Preservation Foundation is limited to 2 years. And it really comes down to this. In 2 years, you exhaust all your material. You know, after all the newsletters and all the speeches and presentations, you've heard all my jokes, you've heard all of my stories, so there's really none left. So it's really time to step down when that happens, I think. But I must say, the 2 years went by quickly because the job, and don't tell anybody this outside this room, but the job of the president of the Lake Forest Preservation Foundation is an easy job. It's an easy job because I was able to work with two outstanding executive directors, Jennifer McGregor and of course Marcy Kerr, who's also here today. There she is. And just when you thought that the Marcy tour, going away tour, retirement tour was over, she gets one more shout out today. I also had the privilege, and it made it easy, of working with an outstanding board. You don't know the depth of this board. The board has such knowledge about preservation. Any question you have, the board has some experience to ask it, whether it's legal, whether it's architectural, whether it's building, all the things are there on the board. It's really amazing. And of course, it has been my privilege to be able to serve all of the members of the Lake Forest Preservation Foundation who have so generously contributed to the foundation over the course of many years. And so I thank you for that. It's been really a privilege. And the easiest part of the job too, of course, is that it's our mission. The mission makes the job easy, right? The mission is to preserve the historic visual character of Lake Forest. And that's a worthwhile mission. It's a mission that some people think that our mission is that living preservation is living the past. And the exact opposite is true. Preservation is about laying down memories for the future. It is about inspiring people for the future. That's what preservation really is all about. And I was reminded of that when I went to the Infant Welfare Society show house and gardens yesterday. You go to see the structure there, it's an inspiring structure. But if you actually go inside, the level of creativity that you'll see in those rooms is absolutely astounding. But was it more interesting to me as I actually talked to many of the designers, and the designers came from all over the country. When I talked to them, they had the same story when they came to Lake Forest. They said they were so impressed by the depth and the quality of the historic structures and our legacy we have here. They were astounded by what we have here in Lake Forest. And it's really pretty remarkable when you see it. And their stories were all the same. They said, you guys do it right. You actually preserve things the way they should be, and you have it in place in the way it should be. And it did occur to me that when I walk Lake Forest, I walk it regularly, every time I turn a corner, I see something I haven't seen before. That's how much depth there is to what we have here in Lake Forest. And it really brings to focus, I think, one of the goals of the Lake Forest Preservation Foundation. And one of those goals really is to make sure we never take for granted what we have here in Lake Forest. We have so much to be grateful for, but we cannot forget what we have. And that's really the mission in many respects of the Lake Forest Preservation Foundation, to make sure we always remember what we have and appreciate what we have. And to that end, over the course of the last year, we've done a number of things to try to ensure that we don't forget what we have. The Preservation Foundation has submitted an application to create the first new local historic district in over 20 years. There hasn't been one in 20 years. And that's the Lasker Mill Road Farm Historic District. That's what we're working on now. The submission's about this thick, but it's very thorough, but we've submitted that. We've submitted the detailed design parameters for the renovation of Bank Lane. That's been this year. We hosted 3 nationally renowned authors who told us about preservation and gardening preservation. Raised a record amount for the annual fund this year. Continued our brick and mortar projects, and that's Jim, who's always taken such a good job on those. And we celebrate the homeowners for their contributions to preservation. And that's really what we're doing today. We're celebrating the homeowners who have really, that's the trenches of preservation, right? Is what you do in your home and try to preserve it. And that's what we really celebrate on this day. And there could be no better person to kick off that celebration than our own Art Miller over here. Art has been with the foundation from virtually the beginning. And if you have a historic home and you have a question about who the owner was, Art will know the answer. If you want to know what the color originally was, Art will have the answer. And if you want to know if the porch light was changed recently, Art will have the answer to that too. He is the fount of knowledge on all things historic, and I say before, he has the unenviable task today of picking 5 that he actually as his favorites. But I must say I found it interesting that my first official act as a public act in the Preservation Foundation was to introduce Art as a speaker. And my last official act will be to introduce Art as a speaker. And it just goes to show you that the presidents may come and go, but we always have Art Miller.
So I cheated a little bit. It's +1. Thank you, everyone. I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to be introduced. I sound kind of like the Bernie Sanders of Lake Forest architecture. So I have 5.5 houses. 5 of them are larger, and one on Wildwood Road, where Janet and I lived for 46 years, is smaller, but just to show that Vitruvius's ideas about architecture that he said, what was the criteria? Was sturdiness, practicality, and beauty or surprise or delight. And so even on a small scale, you can do some of those things, as many of us here know. The first house is 570 North Sheridan Road, the homestead, which was the DeVillo R. and Ellen Hubbard Holt house of 1860. And the Holt family lived there from 1860 to 1960, two different generations. The architect is a Chicago architect who built the old hotel in Triangle Park, built the first Lake Forest Academy building, and he did this house and other major early buildings. There it is. Now, what I'm going to say about these 5 houses is that they have some of those characteristics. This is a sturdy house. It's also a surprising house because if you see this very good classic large example of a Italianate regular house, you have what you're seeing really is a brick house covered by clapboard with concrete floors. Now the guy, Mr. Holt, was in the lumber business. So this is what it looks like very recently after being restored. The current owner spent a whole bunch of time taking all the wood off of the house, off of the brick house, repairing it, cleaning it, and putting it back on. It was the 160-year-old lumber from Mr. Villa Holt's house out in his lumber concession up in Green Bay. There they are, the little old man and his wife. They're connected to the early days of the Midwest and Chicago. He started as a teenager in the fur trade at Mackinac. He then found that concession in Green Bay, moved to Chicago, had the first load of lumber on the Illinois and Michigan Canal, first load of anything on the Michigan Canal, and found Chicago to be too noisy and busy and moved to the suburbs, all in one lifetime. His wife, she was a Hubbard, and she was related to Gerton Saltonstall Hubbard, who was the first Chicagoan, came in 1818 at the age of 16. And so this takes you right back to the beginnings of the upper Midwest. The house is little changed on the inside at all. That's what it looked like back in the old days. And this picture was 1866. There are 3 stovepipe hats. DeVillo Holt is on the left. Norman B. Judd, who was Lincoln's campaign manager and helped save his life on the way to Washington in 1861. And then the other stovepipe hat on the right is the first professor, college-level professor at the institution that became Lake Forest College. The rest of them are in a book done in 2000 called Lake Forest Estates, People, and Culture, but that shows. Now, that's an excellent house. This is another excellent house. We're all used to these houses. We see them, we drive by them all the time. We don't realize how different they are, how much they stood out at the time. This is Ragdale, 1230 North Green Bay Road. Ragdale still is, the ultimate, absolutely best modern farmhouse. It was a really reinterpretation of English vernacular with, interestingly enough, Howard Vendor and Shaw, the architects, own vision of it through going to MIT to the first architecture program in the United States and studying Greek architecture. That's a distal and antis simple temple form in that loggia. So this was an incredibly early house. A dozen years later, there were a whole bunch of them in England, but there aren't any that are earlier than this. This is the back of the house. It's entirely different. It's Queen Anne style, very nice. If you look through the house, it's narrow, and you could have a view from the entry hall through the dining room and out toward the Skokie River and across. This is the plan. It wasn't a big house. It was relatively small. The entrance door is on the right of the loggia, and then the public rooms are all to the left of that or straight ahead. The rest of it was service space. This was expanded later, but that was what it was. Howard Van Doren Shaw, that was showed him as age 28, same age that F. Scott Fitzgerald was when he wrote The Great Gatsby, for instance. He went on to do other great things, including Market Square and a great big important factory for the R.R. Donnelley Company in the city that was really innovative factory arts and crafts style. Got the first Midwestern practicing architect to win the AIA, American Institute of Architects, gold medal, 1926-27. Third house, Jeffrey knows this house. He's paying the taxes and everything. It's 111 East Ridge Lane, Mr. and Mrs. William E. Cloud Jr. It's their second house that they had built by David Adler, the architect, 1927. Here you see it from a book 25 years ago. It's now been returned to its whitewashed state that it was originally. And this is a picture of it, what it looked like when it was built. And it's very crisp, and it looks like something done by Carl Friedrich Schinkel in Berlin 100 years earlier, very German. The interesting fence came from a book that was published, an issue of a magazine called The Studio, published on gardens in 1926-27. It's a garden fence that was done by Joseph Hoffman. So this was coming out, it was very current at the time, and so it was used to fit in with this site. The house itself is deceptive. It's on what I referred to the previous owners before Jeffrey's time as a garbage lot. It was built with a noisy schoolhouse on the east, a busy street on the south, and another busy street on the west, Green Bay Road, Deer Path, Green Bay Road. The good side we saw. So he built a house where you have no sense of that. When they did an Art Institute show in 2002 and they made a model of the house, they didn't even notice that the site was a triumph to have accomplished. So you go into the first floor of this 11,000 square foot house, and there's just a small room with a low ceiling, and it's constrained, and then we're going to have release later. You go up a stairway to the left, and you enter a 2.5 story living room with lots of light. If you go to the right, you go out onto a stoop that leads down to a terrace, that leads down to a ring around, kind of a rectangular walk around a sunken garden. That's the reverse of that cove ceiling that we saw inside. The fourth house, 170 Mayflower Road, Mr. and Mrs. Charles F. Glore Jr., Frank Lloyd Wright, 1956. I consider this to be the best of only five Frank Lloyd Wright second career designed Chicago commuting area houses, 1939 to 1959. This is really the best. It has, going back to those criteria, it has sturdiness, it has practicality, and it has surprise and beauty. Notice this. This is a roof view from a book, but at the top is a very deep, the biggest gorge going across on the North Shore, basically. It's an intersection of two ravines, and which means it's protected, borrowed landscape. The house is simpler than most of the Frank Lloyd Wright houses. It's straight. The closest example I can think of is the Roby House in Hyde Park, which was similar, which overlooked an open space in 1908. This house, now this, I don't know if Susan Benjamin is here, I guess maybe not, but I stole this picture from her book, Modern in the Middle. But it shows the interior organizing a hallway that takes you through the house. And it also has the angles that he introduced that come from the Taliesin West house that he built, used at a church in Madison, a Unitarian meeting place. And if you look at the lower corner, you can see that the house does one thing that lots of ranch-style houses did. It follows the grade down. This house was built into the ravine edge. This was a little bit trying to get the sublime, the 18th century notion of the sublime, which is, for people that don't like heights like me, scary. Now here's the house from the outside. The next three pictures are by Jennifer, and this shows one from our garden stroll last summer. You can see it's got 2 stories. It has a prow, kind of like a ship almost. It's It's very open. We know those glass windows as more typically Mies van der Rohe. So these architects did kind of pilfer from each other's ideas, you know. They weren't proud. Here we see it even better. There's a bedroom upstairs, and the interesting thing about the bedroom is it's open. The primary bedroom is open out to the west, but it has doors that can be closed so that you can't see inside to them. The living room is down below, but it's a 2.5-story living room, just like at 111 Ridge Lane. It all looks out over this enormous gorge, which this time of year is at its best. Now here we see its long, low-slung form. This is like the Roby house. It also is built to keep the sunlight in summertime out and the winter light to come in. The deck is not original. It's not part of the original house. It's really was added. It's triangular in shape like a 1934 house that Wright did, but it was added afterwards. He had come up with a very complicated scheme for a cement system down the lake to a pool, which either the city fathers or Charles F. Glore Jr., whose funds were somewhat infinite, felt it was a little beyond the pale. Now this is a hiccup here. This is 4.5. This is 169 Wildwood Road, Jan and Art Miller, 1975 to 2020. It was built originally by Alex Kelly, a builder, in 1923, and it was rehabbed by architect Dan Sutherland, 1997 to 2000. Now this is a house on Illinois Road that was built in 1892 by Kelly. Kelly had come into Chicago and Lake Forest in 1879 and 1882, bringing the first Angus cattle to the town that were kept on a field that John V. Farwell had. And he stayed and worked and became a builder. But the cattle went on from 1882 to 1885 when the two Farwell brothers, C.B. and John V., traded a state capital complete that's still being used in Texas in Austin for 10 acres of the Panhandle for a cattle ranch called the XIT Ranch, small operation. And those Angus cattle were what they used to build up the breed. Now, he ran into something that we're never going to see again, thank goodness. Actually, after World War I, there was a pandemic, and then they had 2 recessions. Now, we're fortunate that in 100 years later, we never have those problems anymore, but he decided to rent his big house on Illinois Road and build a bungalow, a Chicago bungalow, on Wildwood Road, which is a 1-block street. And it has this little front porch. As he was getting ready to leave in 1940, he put concrete on all the walls, which was great, except that the concrete on the porch in front didn't go down 42 feet. So the whole thing slowly returned to the earth. So the Millers, in 1997 to 2000, took that porch off, put on a sitting room on the primary bedroom above, and this was done. Dan Sutherland was the architect. We'll see later that there's shingles on another part of the property, but here you see shingle-like clay tiles that came from the house at Walden on Lake Michigan, the estate, Cyrus McCormick. He had them made in 1913 because they would be fireproof. And when the house was torn down in 1955, they went on another house. That house was torn down by the same architect using the salvaged these, and we had put them on our house. And they're wonderful. They completely fool everyone, including the woodpeckers. There was a mill shop in the back of the property that was used as a garage, sort of, and we replaced it with a new garage, but because it was going to have to be in the middle of the yard, we put a porch on top. So this is the sun porch on the top there that you see. But the element of surprise, there's the driveway leading to the garage underneath. But from the house, you don't see it. So this is a 2,000 square foot house compared to 11,000 square foot houses and bigger, sort of places too. The 5th house, my pièce de résistance, is the Ringwood and Walden Lane new classicist Ann and Rob Krebs Polton Group designed 2003 Italian villa. It's adaptively reused since 2023 as the Krebs Center for the Humanities at Lake Forest College. So here's the front facade. This is the entry facade. It looks like the Cuneo Museum in in Libertyville. Any of you been to the Cuneo Museum over there? Yeah. So, it's very similar. The Poulton Group, David Poulton and his wife Sharon Harvey, who used to be on our board, they designed this house. What's the tricky part about it is that basically all of the main interior elements and some of the exterior elements were all shipped over from Florence, where at the time, the Krebs had a share in a large villa there in Fiesole above Florence, looking down onto the city in the Arno. And so they wanted to recreate that spirit in Lake Forest, and they did. They even have an interior courtyard. There's a interior walkway that goes all around this, that's inside the house. And then here's the garden front, with a small garden that we see, formal garden, just like at an Italian villa. This is something that goes clear back to when they were starting to have Italianate houses in 1860, then having them in the early part of the 20th century, and here, the beginning of the 21st century again. Now there in the middle is Rob Krebs, and he's an interesting character because he took over, he was CEO of a regional railroad, the Southern Pacific, took over the Santa Fe Railroad after that, and with that company, then took over the Burlington Northern Railroad, which is the Northern Transcontinental Railroad. So you had the two transcontinental railroads that circle in the main line of the Union Pacific, which was kind of a neat boxing in item. It was such a good deal that after he retired, Warren Buffett bought it for the Berkshire Hathaway. He recently became the interim president at Lake Forest College, and my quip right off the bat to people was, well, I guess he's going to take over the University of Chicago. So thank you very much for hearing my a rebuttal.
I recognize this house. Was there a LFPF event in this house?
You're not wrong. No, we did go. But it's still one of my favorites. I've done several tours there for different groups. Thank you. Who's my...
Oh, I'm James Sheeran. Excuse me. I'm James Sheeran. I'm a member of the board, resident of Lake Forest, born and raised here. Also live in New York, and now live here in my mother's house I inherited, and enjoying being part of the community again and a board member. Well, here are the award categories. I won't read through them all with you, but if you'll glance at them, please, to understand. Today we're going to do preservation, rehabilitation, and infill. And the first one is for preservation, and the house is 600 East Westminster, called Westover. Original owner was Martha Hewitt and Hiram McCulloch. The current owners are the Moonies. The original architects, Charles Sumner Frost. The rehabilitation architect, Vincy Hamp Architects. The rehabilitation landscape architect, Doug Hare. Westover, the house built for Martha Hewitt and McCulloch, was designed by Charles Sumner Frost and is a true 6 degrees of separation kind of story. Frost was not merely the architect, he was also family. Married to Martha's sister, Mary Hewitt. Both women were the daughters of Marvin Hewitt, the president and founder of the Chicago Northwestern Railroad. Yet another thread to this web, a third sister, Belle Hewitt, married Alfred Hoyt Granger, who would later become Frost's partner in Frost and Granger. Frost and Granger went on to build the Chicago Northwestern Railroad Terminal. So this is a really lovely setting of these daughters and their architect husbands and lots of money. Frost's own home, Eastover, stands immediately next door to the right. So, and here's, if you really pay attention, what the story I'm really telling here is really all about this front porch. As you can see the picture on the left, and any of you who lived here, ages ago might remember, there was a time when the porch didn't exist. We don't know exactly when it was torn off. It could have been the 50s, the 60s, or we don't know if David Adler tore it off because he completely redid the interior in the 1930s, making it a very glamorous, elegant Georgian interior. But when the Morrisons bought it in 2000, they saw this great opportunity to bring back the porch. But what I want to tell you about the porch, in designing Westover, Frost demonstrated both confidence and fluency with the most fashionable architectural ideals of the 1890s. He revived, in the spirit of the 18th century, a centered Georgian colonial, but he layered it playfully, architecturally, with many forward twists. As you'll see, the attic dormers are off-center from the front door. Now, who would do that, right? But that was the fashion of the time, to be quirky and inventive. I mean, you can see that it's all because of these far porches on the left. Not only that, there are bay windows hanging off the second floor. Not a very colonial, Georgian thing, but a colonial revival Georgian thing, and very much in the fashion of the time to take chances, make it sexy and have fun. But the thing he did that's, I kind of think, the craziest, but that's the good thing about what revival architecture is of this period, this front door that the Morrisons put back, as you can see, is what you might remember from any front of any great house you've ever seen with a pedimented arch front door and a broken bonnet. But it's not the front door, it's the entire porch. So he blew it up maybe 5 times the scale, and he made a porch out of it, which is truly unique. There is no historic precedent for that. There are many doorways like this, but not entire porches. Why someone ripped it off, I don't know, but thank God the Morrisons decided to put it back with John Vinci. And it makes an extraordinary and unique house in Lake Forest representing our period of Georgian revival architecture. Let's see. That's our award today for this wonderful house. It stayed true to itself. It's been preserved, cared for. The landscape garden by Hare is extraordinary. And for the Moonies to continue the character of it, take care of it, and keep it a fine house. The next house, pressing right, moving forward, is 85 Sunset Place, another award for preservation. The original owners were Margaret and Stanley Kittle. The current owner is Meredith Mitchell. Likely original builder were the Griffith brothers in 1928. This charming colonial federal-style residence is a wonderful example of the post-World War II building boom in West Park neighborhood. It stands along Sunset Drive, what was once the north side of the original 1895 Holt subdivision, an area laid out by Howard Van Doren Shaw on the old Atteridge Farm. Today, it is part of the West Park National Historic District. Originally, Sunset Drive had houses on both sides. So you know where West Park is, there were actually houses across the street. I didn't know that. That's very cool, Art. And so now this wonderful house, Meredith's house, gets to look out over the park. But in the 20th century, the city acquired those houses on the other side of the street to enlarge the park, but of course it gives those houses a wonderful view. Architecturally, the house follows a seamless formula, a central door flanked by 2 windows below with 3 windows symmetrically placed above, a classic pattern dating back centuries. The bay window beside the front door are capped with graceful convex copper roofs, a nod to the English Regency. Above the entrance is a simple classical broken pediment adding another elegant. The house is in the Preservation Foundation's 2022 guidebook, and Meredith Mitchell is here. There she is. Meredith, come on up. Oh, are the Moonies here? I don't know if they were. Oh, they are. Excuse me, Moonies. Oh. Oh, Mr. Mooney. Next, 380 Children, also an award for preservation. Original owners Ellen Lorber and Paul Lorber. Current owners Kip Halverson and Trey Gonzalez. The original architect is Stanley D. Anderson and Tickner. The current landscape architect is Craig Bergman. This elegant, asymmetrical French Renaissance-style house, designed in the Chateauesque tradition, perfectly captures the tailored sophistication of the 1930s. Built of lime-wash brick with limestone accents, steel windows, and a slate-tiled roof, reflects the most fashionable architectural sensibilities of the time. And by that, I mean it has that kind of crisp 1930s Art Deco leaning effect. So while it's French, not being sort of warm and cozy with earthy materials like you'd expect, it has a little bit of the glamour sense of the Art Deco period blended with the old world sense of French style. Following the crash of 1929, this house marked the final chapter in Edward Turnbull's Deer Path Hills Estates expansion. Construction beginning in the 1930s, bringing Turnbull's remarkable series of houses all to a close. In other words, what Art's saying is all the houses that you know in the Deer Path Hill Estate surrounding area, this was the very last one, and that was the end of this great era of extraordinary houses. In recognition of its architectural significance, the house is on the National Register of Historic Places, thanks in large part to Paul Bergman, the community's foremost authority on Stanley Anderson. And accepting the award today are Trey and Kip. The next award is for rehabilitation. 980 North Green Bay Road. Original owners, Mary and Prentice Loomis Coonley. Current owners are Amy Falls and Hartley Rogers. Original architect, Howard Van Dorn Shaw, 1911. Rehabilitation architect, Liederbach and Graham. Rehabilitation builder, Lynch Construction. Howard Van Dorn Shaw's estate for the Prentice Coonleys famously stands as a landmark of the American arts and crafts design, blending English country house tradition with a distinctly modern, livable spirit. Here, Shaw achieved a country house of rare grace, deeply American, subtly romantic, and enduringly modern. But until recently, this handsome stable and garage complex had long been neglected, and now they've been sensitively rehabilitated. Designed to be seen along the picturesque drive to the main house, the service complex is composed of painted timber, red brick, also in the English arts and crafts style. It features a walled courtyard layout with a crowned by a charming glazed cupola. Today, the group of service buildings has been thoughtfully adapted for reuse as a set residence and a home office. And while interiors fall outside of our primary focus, it is worth noting that Liederbach and Graham had artfully reimagined them also. This is an extraordinary building. Many of you probably haven't seen it. You'd have to go through the gates down their property, but it sits along the driveway, and you're on the way to this beautiful house, and there is kind of romantic courtyard of a cottage of a series of for garages and stables, and it's topped with that extraordinary cupola. It's really very special, and Liederbach and Graham have done a perfect job. And I don't know, are they here today? Oh, hi, Phil. Cool. Oh, great. Super. $1570 Estate Lane, awarded also for rehabilitation. Original owners, I'm saying, are Florence and Albert Lasker, because it's part of the Lasker Old Mill Estate. The current owner, Naliv Fritz. The original architect, we're going to say, is David Adler in 1923, although there was some kind of building there before that he restored, but it's sort of inconsequential. Essentially, it's part of the complex designed by David Adler. The house at 1570, Estate Lane, was originally constructed around 1913, but in 1923, David Adler made modifications as part of his master plan for for Albert Adler's estate holdings within what would become Old Mill Farm. After the death of Lasker's wife Flora in 1945, he gifted Old Mill Farm to the University of Chicago. The University of Chicago held it only briefly, but found it completely impractical to manage and hold, and started selling off parcels in 1947. This is when Horse Barn 2, as this house is known, was sensitively adapted into a single-family residence. Note Horse Barn 1, right next door, is owned by Jennifer McGregor. You all may have seen her house, you know. Recent restoration efforts have focused on preserving the building's historic character. The roof has been replaced in kind. The exterior door has returned to the signature Adler color used throughout the Lasker neighborhood. Original brick pavers have been carefully reset. Fencing restored, new landscaping installed to reinforce the rural character of the setting. Today, 1570 stands as an important survivor of the early 20th century Lake Forest estate architecture, a testament to thoughtful adaptive reuse and ongoing preservation stewardship. And is Nellie Fritz here? Neely. another award for rehabilitation. 1620 Lake Road. This is the very, very end of Lake Road at the far south side, just as you go down to the boat ramp. Let's see. Original owners Adele and Wayne Chatfield Taylor. Current owners Kelly and Jeffrey Brincat. Original architect Ribori Wentworth Dew and McCormick in 1925. The rehabilitation architect is Edward Deegan. Wayne Chatfield Taylor was a Chicago banker and a government official who served under Franklin Delano Roosevelt, holding key roles in the Treasury and the Commerce Departments. His wife, Adele Blow Chatfield Taylor, was a civic leader and a preservationist, known for restoring historic homes and landmarks across Virginia and Massachusetts. Together, they embodied a deep commitment to public service and historic preservation. In 1925, the Chatfield Taylors built Bluff's Edge, as it's called, a distinguished Georgian revival house designed by Ribori, Wentworth, and Dewey and McCormick, an architect firm trained at MIT and at École des Beaux-Arts. Bluff's Edge marries classical tradition with the emerging spirit of the early 20th century American design. The garden facade distills the essence of Georgian revival. Refined symmetry, red brick set against crisp white trim, and a central bay with Corinthian pilasters. Poised at the edge of a bluff overlooking ravine-edged tableland, the house commands in its site with a flawless and unforgettable presence. Today, the home's current owners have cared for it for over a decade and have sensitively updated it to suit the 21st century family life, adding an attached garage, mudroom, glazed breezeway for expanded family living, all with great respect for the original character of this remarkable house. And are the Brincats here? Thank you. Oh, Edward Deegan, excuse me. Congratulations. The next two awards are for infill. And this means in our beautiful town, architects and homeowners who have taken time to pay attention to their surroundings and build houses that fit in seamlessly, okay, which is really important. I mean, that's how we go forward with our character, our vernacular look, and this is a very important thing. They're not always in historic neighborhoods, but they're important houses to the fabric of Lake Forest. 1274 North Sheridan Road. Original owner is Susan Dupree. Original architect is okay, all right. 1274 North Sheridan Road, awarded for infill. The original owner is Susan Dupree. The original architect is Late Liasis, working for Northworks. Built for Susan Dupree, who is the mother of Lucy Bickford and the mother-in-law of Northworks partner Bill Bickford. This house blends seamlessly into the East Side Historic District as exemplary infill. It's directly next door and meant to appear as if it's been built at the same time as the Bickford's own house, designed by Granger and Fraser in 1925. By matching materials, scale, detailing, and character, the new house preserves a historic streetscape while currently adding to the district's living fabric, a model of respectful, preservation-minded design. And I believe Mrs. Dupree is here with Nick. And our last award, another infill. The owners at 1000 Grandview Lane, owners Nancy Lyons and Dr. Stephen Hannock. The architect is Dinah Melcar. This house was done in 2024, we think? Three? Okay. The builder is Lynch Construction. In southeast Lake Forest, bounded by Wesley, Beverly, Old Elm, Waveland Roads, there's an unusually fine concentration of post-war, mid-century modern houses. Architects who contributed to this tradition include Edward Dart, Jack Vicks, Robert Rasmussen, Norman Millet, Roy Binkley, and Ike Colburn. This new house by Diana Mellicar fits beautifully as a fine example of infill preservation. Good infill honors the character of its setting while standing clearly as a building of its own time. This house does exactly that. This is how preservation lives and breathes, not only by restoring the old, but by carefully extending the story in a way that future generations will recognize and respect. Thank you, Diana Mellicar. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, James, and to the whole Preservation Awards Committee. What an amazing job.